Welcome to the Fantasy Throwdown Podcast, bringing you the latest updates from the world of sports, gambling, and pop culture. Because you can't have a show without hot takes or a Tiger King meme these days. Know what I'm saying? Now, with over 200 episodes and ready to get after it again, here's your host, Dwayne Callender.
Hello, welcome to the show, everyone. Got a lot to talk about here. It is the Euro 2020 final, even though we're in 2021. But you know what? I've done since harping on that. But we've got the final between England and Italy today at Wembley Stadium. I'm in a King of the Cup final for DraftKings, so winner take all final. So I got quite a bit of stake in the game on this one. But a lot to talk about, but I'll dive into the UFC pay-per-view last night with Conor McGregor losing in shocking fashion to Dustin Poirier. And by losing, I mean snapping his ankle on live TV. I mean, it is as gruesome as it sounds, but Conor McGregor... at the end of the first round, clearly was unable to continue the match against Dustin Poirier because it looked like he had rolled his ankle. Then after the horn had sounded and folks started looking at him, McGregor immediately motioned to get for help, and then you realize that his ankle was completely snapped. Poirier pointed out in the post-match interview that he felt it snap because he had checked the leg kick, and when Conor had tried to attempt, because Conor had attempted a number of low kicks, he checked one, and he said he felt it something went wrong there because it didn't land properly. And then when you watch on the replay, you do see where McGregor's shin does make contact with Poirier's knee as he checks the leg kick, and leading to the initial fracture and instability, which eventually gave out when he tried to step back, and the leg just gave out under him. So pretty gruesome end to the fight, to be honest. Definitely hurt me because my bets were on Poirier to finish McGregor after the first round. In rounds 2 and 3, and that would have been a very sizable payday. But obviously with him being unable to continue to fight, the fight is deemed ruled a technical is deemed a stoppage due to a doctor intervention, which McGregor made very clear that he wanted that to be the official ruling, that it's by doctor stoppage, not because Dustin Poirier actually hurt him. He was very adamant about that before and after the official announcement came, and in the post-fight interview with Joe Rogan. McGregor was anything but conciliatory in defeat. But a very strange fight because you saw McGregor try to emphasize the leg kicks and maintain range and get Poirier. It very much looked like the first time they fought each other, and this goes back a number of years. I think that first fight was back in 2014, if I'm not mistaken. Feels like a lifetime ago, to be perfectly honest. But Conor was very aggressive with the leg kicks, trying to maintain distance and throw Poirier off his game, but realistically, Poirier wasn't having anything of it. He was kind of stalking Conor down and got Conor in a bad spot up against the cage, and Conor goes for the guillotine and then doubles down on it by trying to do the jumping guillotine, which is like 95 to 98% of the time, a terrible decision. It's so slim, the odds of success getting that jumping guillotine to work on a guy, especially with the jiu-jitsu background of Poirier, that you hardly ever get that sub. You burn out your arms, and you put yourself in a bad spot, because when you do the jumping guillotine, you're automatically going to the ground with the other guy on top of you. So it's just not a good look, and it's a bad visual for the judges. So, of course, Poirier wrestles McGregor, beats him up on the ground, and puts him in a very bad spot, to be honest. Conor was kind of fortunate that he actually got back up in that round, but, that was after he had already, by Poirier's account, that was after he had hurt himself with that leg kick. So you have to wonder now, did Conor realize that he didn't have his legs under him? And that's why he needed to go. He got desperate and went for that jumping guillotine because he knew he couldn't stand and bang with Poirier that much longer because his foot was already bothering him. You got to ask the question. Looking at the fight again, it's certainly possible that McGregor knew he was hurt and went for the desperation play because Conor has to know that was such a slim chance of success. Like, why would you even go for that play unless you were truly desperate? And I think that might have been the case. Like, McGregor might have already known he was in bad shape in that fight and went for the choke, knowing that that might have been his best chance of actually getting the W. It's very interesting how that fight ended up playing out because everyone looking at that broadcast, I know the casual fans may have thought like, oh, Conor had him in trouble with the guillotine. It was not close. That guillotine was not close to being cinched in, and it was just a wasted effort. So, interesting to see how that went. Already Dana White is saying that there's going to be a fourth fight. This was supposed to be the blow-off trilogy. After McGregor won in 2014, they had this rematch in January this year, which saw Poirier put Conor's lights out and, led to Conor demanding this rematch, this rubber match. And, obviously have the finish, but you don't know the structural integrity of McGregor's leg right now. It's too early to tell. It's going to be a lengthy recovery. Poirier may be fighting for the belt before Conor is back healthy. So to me, Poirier should be looking ahead to seeing if he could get a matchup against Charles Oliveira, who is now the head of the, at the lightweight division, I should say. Now that Khabib is retired, Oliveira's got the belt. I think it only makes sense. Like, Poirier's the number one contender. Like, Poirier's got to fight Oliveira. It really just comes down to that. Poirier has been looking for that title shot again after he lost to Khabib. I mean, everyone loses to Khabib. Poirier and Oliveira has to be the next matchup. I just don't see what else is there for Poirier to do. He got the money fight with McGregor and he won it. Time to go for the belt again. I mean, it's really that simple. Now, from the Oliveira perspective, he wasn't exactly thrilled because he didn't have that impressive of a comeback. Well, I mean, it was a comeback victory, but it wasn't. He didn't win the belt in dominating fashion over Michael Chandler. Even though he won it by KO, like, Chandler dominated that first round. So, technically, from the Oliveira camp, a fight with Conor not only is a massive payday, but if you can get Conor to the ground and submit him, that cements you as the champ. That would have been the money fight. Now you're in a position where you're going to have to defend the belt against Poirier. It's not going to be nearly as lucrative as a matchup against Conor would have been. And, standing toe-to-toe, like striking game, definitely favors Poirier. And ground game, yes, it favors Oliveira, but it's not the drastic disadvantage that it would have been if it had been Conor instead. Like, that's a far riskier matchup with Poirier is a far riskier proposition for Oliveira than it would have been with it being Conor McGregor and less money involved. It's like this was just not a good night for. It was not a good night last night for Charles Oliveira because now his next matchup is harder and he's going to make less money out of it for defending the belt. So, I mean, that's really where things stand. And yes, Dana can say all he wants about another matchup between Conor and Poirier, but Poirier, timetable wise, he's going to fight for the belt before he fights Conor again. If he fights Conor again, because, you never know. Conor could just say he's had enough, but knowing Conor, he's not going to go out on that. He's going to fight Poirier again, even if it is illogical. All right, so with that out of the way, let's talk about the Euro final here between England and Italy. Obviously, England gets the home field advantage with everything being at Wembley. Pretty much every match they've had has been at Wembley. Because of COVID protocols, it just worked out that way. But they're slight favorites. Within the distance, they are plus 150 favorites. Italy is plus 230, and a draw within the 90 minutes is plus 190. Now, the over/under in terms of the betting lines has been set at 1.5. The over is minus 170, the under is plus 140. I could see it going either way, to be honest. This is a very tricky matchup because I could see both of these teams locking it down at 1-0 and just playing for that 1-0 victory. Obviously, if it's Italy, they're gonna do that because that's the approach that they took with Spain. They got the lead and try to go at it from that perspective against Spain. Now, Spain did manage to get the equalizer in the second half, late in the second half, but Italy did get the victory on PKs. But I think if Italy gets ahead again, they're going to go right back to that same strategy of just turtling up and forcing the action to come to them. So to me, I just look at this matchup and saying, first mover is more than likely going to win this. England has yet to concede, which is always a sign of foreboding measure that something's going to happen to England. But so far in this Euro competition, England has avoided the major mistake that we've seen them run into in past tournaments where someone overcommits on the ball that they shouldn't have. They make the turnover that they shouldn't make, or they just play way too tight. This England group has taken their chances. They've been aggressive. I'm very curious about the lineups because I keep hearing rumors that Kieran Trippier's going to be starting today. And to me, the only way Trippier can start today is if Trippier is starting over Luke Shaw, because I can't see Kyle Walker, with as well as Walker's played in the tournament this year, that Walker is going to be on the bench for the final. So I'm very curious to see how England's setting up for this final, because realistically, there are different ways both teams can go, but I think the set lineup with England is more than enough to beat Italy. England has the deepest roster. The biggest thing that's been an Achilles heel for England is just the nerves on the international stage and making mistakes. But if we're talking about just pure talent-wise, England is the superior squad, even against Italy. And what we saw against Italy is that without Spinazzola in the back line, you can put a lot of pressure on Italy, by moving your forwards up. And that's what Spain did. They had a lot of pressure on crosses against Italy that Italy was not really that adept at the defending. They didn't have the team speed to measure up against Spain. Like, the fact that Italy got the first goal was very fortunate, in my opinion, because Spain had them on the back heel for most of the game. And even when Spain was chasing, they put Italy in a number of bad spots. So to me, this really just kind of comes down to if Saka is getting the start with Sterling, can those two put enough pressure on Chiellini and Bonucci on the back line? If you can put enough pressure on Italy's back line to commit fouls and allow for some free kicks to be in place for the danger areas, That way, you're going to be able to unlock Mason Mount and Harry Kane because they're going to be able to create enough pressure off of the set pieces that somebody's attacking players either from the center back's position or even doing a set play and allowing some of the speedsters to get behind Italy. I think it's going to unlock a number of areas. So to me, there are far more ways for England to attack Italy to open up this game than it is going to be for Italy to break down England. For Italy to kind of get into England, they've got to be able to use Lorenzo Insigne to somehow get behind a McGuire or Stones and draw enough fouls, get them on yellow cards, make them far more passive. You got to get Calvin Phillips in trouble with the ref by booking him. Because if those guys can have free reign over the midfield, I just don't see where Italy is going to be able to have the possession, let alone put up enough pressure to really get England in a bad spot to start conceding a goal or two. If Italy scores, I think it's more than likely it's because they cause one chance and draw PK, and most likely the guy who be taking a PK for Italy is Jorginho, and score a goal that way. To me, that is how they're going to score against England. They need to have a moment where they force something against England, because I don't think you're necessarily beating Pickford from range on a free kick. It's possible that Insigne can do it, but I just don't see it. And yes, Barella could take some spot kicks as well, but again, I don't really see Italy doing it from a set play against England. I think England's got the size. I just don't necessarily see where Italy scores in this matchup unless it's from a complete defensive breakdown that leads to just a one-on-one scenario against Pickford in net, or it's a PK given and they score that way. To me, that's the win condition for Italy. Is like, you got to force England into a bad spot and get your goal that way and then turtle up, or you play for a 0-0 draw and get through extra time as well and get this into PKs. Like, to me, that's Italy's win condition. For England, if you play your game and you use the vast bench you have and just keep pressing on Italy, force them to keep making mistakes, just put enough pressure on them, eventually they're going to crack. To me, this is a very much a by-the-numbers kind of game for England. Play your game. You're going to win this eventually. Don't let the nerves of being at home and being the favorite, even as slight as it is, and the pressure of the moment get to you. It can't just be Harry Kane. Everyone look at Harry to see what he's going to do with the ball. I think if you swing it around, and England's done a very good job of this, moving the ball around. I think between Saka and Sterling, they've actually developed a little bit more chemistry than I thought they would have, which is why we haven't seen that much of we haven't seen that much of Jack Grealish, unless it's in that backup role in the second half where Saka runs out, birds him up in the first half, and then you bring in Grealish as the late game hammer to really put the defense on the back foot and draw fouls against a tired defender, which Grealish is great at doing. He draws a ton of contact with the style of play he has. So to me, this leans very much towards a England 1-0 victory, and we'll see how the game plays out. So for my DraftKings lineups, I'm definitely going to be having a lot of exposure to England pieces, whether it be Mason Mount, whether it be Sterling or Kane. I'm going to be leaning a lot more towards England side of the bracket than Italy. But if I'm taking Italy, I'm definitely looking at Insigne and Jorginho as possibility. Marco Verratti certainly is in play for me. But if I'm playing Italy in the win scenario for Italy, then to to me, Donnarumma has to be in there because in the lineup because I can't see Italy winning a game where they have to score multiple times. At best they can win a 1-1 game again like they did against Spain in PKs. I can't see Italy scoring 2 goals. To me, the way England has played this year, in this tournament, it'd be the most England thing ever for them to not give up a goal this entire tournament and then give up the goal in the final. And multiple goals in the final. I just, it's just a very it's a very pessimistic way of looking at it. But to me, I said this before, the game for England, and I should say this, they did give up the first goal in Denmark, so they did give up 1 goal in the tournament thus far. Denmark did score in the first half, but they hadn't given up a goal heading into the semifinal before Damsgaard scored. And the goal that they gave up was a screamer of a shot by Damsgaard. That was a hell of a goal. Well, again, Insigne has that in him, but man, that's a high degree of difficulty kind of shot. It's not something that you're necessarily going to pencil in for a team. So to me, I think Italy's got their hands full being able to generate the offense necessary. To me, the safer play is England. And I think the under is more than likely going to hold here. I think the under 1.5 makes sense, in my opinion. I don't see a ton of goals coming out of this game, so I'm going to have a double time figuring out what defensive pieces I want from England to see who's going to score more points, because I think this is going to be a kind of a razor-thin slate from a DFS perspective for a final, where you're not going to have a number of goals. So technically, it could put both goalkeepers in play between Pickford and Donnarumma, because if you got a number of shots and they make saves, they may outscore most of the attacking options, because the attacking options can get subbed off in the second half. So that's also something you have to kind of bear in mind when playing on DFS slates. So not necessarily the easiest of slates, but looking forward to the challenge. But like I said, I expect this to be an England 1-0 victory. I'll play for other scenarios with some of my lineups and tinker with it, but I think England actually, it actually does come home today, shockingly enough. I did not see myself saying this heading into the tournament, because knowing England's backstory, when to expect an epic flameout, but they've played consistently well enough, and I don't necessarily see that changing today. So that's going to do it for the show. I will get these lineups together, but yeah, I think in terms of plays today, keep it very simple. I think you're going to look at trying to get a combination of Mason Mount, Insigne, and Kane in there, and then one of the goalkeepers at least. And then try to get a cheaper defensive option, whether it's Chiellini or Stones, maybe a Maguire. I think you're gonna have to play to the win scenario of the team that you're backing, and kind of build out your roster that way. But to me, that seems to be the most logical way of approaching it. So that's all I got, folks. But hopefully we get a great final, at least entertaining wise, and we'll go from there. But have a good day and enjoy the game.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Throwdown Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and all other major outlets.